And we are rolling. So welcome to the astrology study group. And today we are going to cover aspects and a little bit of the language of math and how this all ties in. The last few times, again, we were going over the inner planets, going through all the signs. And we will soon cover sun, moon, and rising, going through all the signs. I want to take a little break from that because it gets intense going through all those. I want to give you a little bit of something else and talk about aspects and mathematics and the angles, because this is the meat of astrology. This is what happens over and over. This is what we're going to look for. This is the polarities, elements, and qualities applied. And I hope that I can roll it out and you can understand it a little better. So I know people that are mathematically challenged or don't like math or didn't do well in math or whatever. I don't want you to fear this, because I want you to embrace this type of mathematics, because I think if you had a good teacher or good teachers, you wouldn't have ever had a problem with math, because math is just a language and it's music and it's through everything. So I think giving you maybe a little bit more empowered approach to understanding how to use this. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I'm going to get on my PowerPoint. I got that one called up. Okay, and bing. Okay, hopefully here we go. Here we go. Here we go. What do we got? Why is that way? Get this over here. Get out of my way. These little windows. You can't see them, but I can, I think. Hopefully. All right, aspects. Let me get rid of this here, make it a nicer screen for you. Okay, so here we go, aspects. The ever-changing relationship between planets in astrology are called aspects, and the 5 major planetary aspects are super important. I'm going to show you many of them today, not just the major ones, but I will get some of the other ones. But they're super important when it comes to understanding how astrology affects us. In short, they describe the angles that planets form to each other on the wheel of the zodiac as they move through the sky. And each of the angles means something different. All right, I'm going to just jump right in this. So I want you to think about the circle. I want you to think about the chart, okay? Just have this in your mind or in front of you, the chart, the wheel. And I'm going to present it to you in a few different ways. We're going to comb over it. So if something doesn't come in, hopefully to come back and I'll have some time for some questions if you need. All right, so if we take this circle and we know that it's 360 degrees, you know, we should know that. If you don't, just, you know it now, 360 degrees all the way around. Now, this is one of the things that's cool. If we take 360 degrees and we divide it by 1, we're going to get 360, of course. And that one is called the conjunction. When 2 planets are right next to each other, real close. All right, now, you can see what I'm doing here. I'm going to take 360 and I'm going to divide it by 2. And I'm going to get 180. And that is going to be opposite, right? That's going to be 1 on one side of it and 1 on the other. That's the opposition. Then I'm going to divide it by 3, and I'm going to get 120 degrees. Oh, good, I can admit here. I don't have to drink it. Okay, so we just started, so don't worry. We're just jumping in. And don't worry, we just started. We're just jumping in. I was blithering a little bit at first. So we're looking at aspects today, and we're starting to get our mind around this. So if you follow my logic here, we have the circle, and we're going to just divide it by different numbers. So as we keep on dividing, we got 360 divided by 3, we're going to get 120, or the trine. If we divide it by 4, we're going to get the 90, or the square. If we divide it by 5, we're going to get something, a 72-degree angle called the quintile. If we divide it by 6, we're going to get the 60-degree angle, or the sextile. If we divide it by 8, we're going to get 45 degrees, or the semi-square. And then divide it by 12, we're going to get the 30 degrees, or the semi-sextile. And there's a few reasons why I've skipped some numbers, because they don't work out exact. And then there are some other aspects that we're going to add some other things too. So I just want you to start to see some different ways of dividing this. All right. Another way to look at this. Okay, so again, the circle's 360, and if we divide it by 12, we have this 30-degree block, which we already said was like the size of each one of those houses, and we have 12 houses, so each one is 30 degrees. Now, if we 30 times 1, that's one increment. That's one of those little squares, the one house. That's 30 degrees. If we multiply that by 2, we're going to get 2 houses, or 60 degrees. If we multiply it by 3, going to get 90, 120. If we multiply it by 5, we get the 150. And then if we multiply it by 6, we get 180. Okay, now hang with me with this. That's halfway around. Now, if we multiply it by 7, we're going to get 210, which is really like the 150-degree angle because it's the same angle. It's just starting one way and it's going to go one way to it. And if we start at that point, we can go the other way around. So maybe one would be we'd go clockwise and we hit it, and the other would be counterclockwise and we hit it. All right, if we multiply by 8, we're going to get 240, or the 120 degrees. And I'm just showing you here that if we take that 180 degree, because that's halfway, right? And if that other 30 degrees, if we minus it, that's what will give us the 150. And then we're going to do that on each of these. So it's just a way of saying that all of these angles, and when I get back to the chart, I'll show you, are all, after you get to the halfway point, it's the same on either side. Because when you get all the way back to that 12, it's 30 degrees, right? I hope that makes sense to everybody. I'm gonna let you just look at that just a second. So we could take all those numbers, those 30 degrees, each of those, and they're all gonna give us one of these types of angles or aspects. All right, the trine, there's 3 of them. There would be every 120 degrees, we would have a point. Here we go. The square is every 4. So, and I'll show you this on a chart, but I just want you to see it this way. The sextile. Now, what I want you to also notice that is these are all geometric shapes and patterns. This one is, what is this one? A hexagon? Is that a 6-sided hexagon? Yeah. So this would be every 60 degrees, it's going to make a sextile. These are all 60-degree angles apart. And look at this geometric shape that fits inside here. And you probably noticed the square, was a square fit inside. And then the trine was a triangle fit inside. And we can keep going, and they can get more complicated. I'll show you in a minute. We can get more complicated shapes. We can keep cutting that, and we can keep putting, more complicated shapes inside of there. So a square in a chart, I'm going to go through these more in detail, but I just want you to see the difference. So a square, what we're going to notice here is that something is going to be, I'm just trying to find a good, I'll show you in a second. Okay, so squares, you'll see them or be like, here, this would be squaring this angle right here. So it's looking at like the sun here, 19 degrees of Scorpio, and that would be squaring over here to Mars at 14 degrees Leo. So we would know that these would have to both be fixed signs, right? So anything fixed to fixed will be a square. Cardinal to cardinal will be a square, provided it's the right in the degrees are the matching points. So if I have something here, this is 14 degrees, and then well, here we got both of these, got a square to the sun and to Neptune at 13 degrees, a little tighter. It's only 1 degree off. That's called the orb. We'll talk about orbs in a minute. So you can see that that's making a pretty tight T-square. And then it's also, this Mars here is also squaring the moon. Look at over here, it's in Taurus. It's another fixed sign. Fixed, fixed, fixed. All right. Now trine will be between compatible elements. So let's look up here at Saturn. I went there first. Saturn up here in Aries, 12 degrees Aries. And then we're gonna look over here and we see Mercury, 11 degrees Leo. We know Aries and Leo are both fire signs. So, okay, fire, fire. And look at, they're only a degree apart. And then we got the moon over here in Sagittarius, the other fire sign. And it's 16 degrees. It's a little further away. It's not as tight over here to Mercury. It's a little closer to Saturn, right? But still a trine. And this is actually would be a grand trine because it's three things on this one. Here's the sextile in the chart, sextiles. And I'm showing like this one, we're showing sextiles all the way around. This is a very unique chart. When we get to patterns and charts, I'll show you some more of these, but let's just look at what a sextiles are going to be. All the polarities will be the same. So let's see, what do we got here? Wish it were a little closer for you. So I'm trying to take one here. All right, so here we got Pisces down here, and then what would be 4 degrees, Neptune, 4 degrees Pisces, and then we're going to come down here, and Pluto is 9 degrees Capricorn. So those are 2 signs apart, and those are both female signs, or feminine. So, okay, that makes part, and then they're close to in degrees, so that would be a sextile. I'm not going to bother reading each of these, but they are all sextiles apart on this chart. Okay, aspects, some are considered hard, or the angle is considered hard, or harsh, which would bring about more difficulty and struggle. And we'll look at this in a little bit more detail. And those would be oppositions and squares. And we'll talk about why in a second. The easy aspects, sometimes known as soft aspects or lazy aspects, are the trine and sextile. And then there's others too, which are parts of these, but these are the 2 or the 4 that are the big ones, easy, hard. And they are considered to be a little bit more gentle, positive, auspicious. Now, there's the conjunction, which there's like no angle. That's like right next to something else. 2 planets right next to each other, 0 degrees of Capricorn and 2 degrees Capricorn, or 5 degrees Leo and 6 degrees Leo, or, that's like right next to each other. So conjunction isn't generally aligned with either category, considering the strong potential for it to go in either direction depending on the planets involved. So a conjunction, we'll talk about again more in a minute, is intense. It depends on what planets are involved. So aspects are essential when it comes to interpreting astrology, as they can totally change the influence and meaning of a planetary placement. So if you got this really nice planet and it's in hard aspect to a nasty planet, it's going to taint the niceness of the other one. So instead of just interpreting a single planet's meaning in a certain sign, it's like Venus in Gemini, okay, or Venus in Gemini in the 11th house. Oh, but it's got a square to Saturn. Ooh, what's that do to it? Okay, so we have to consider how they blend with those other energies. Are the 2 compatible planets cozying up to one another in a harmonious conjunction, or are they frustrating each other in a harsh feeling square? For example, even though Venus is the planet of love and generally associated with positive qualities, if it's in difficult aspect with another planet like Saturn, for example, it could cause upset in a love life instead of bestowing us with pure Venetian goodness. Or it could be putting in structure or order in your love life, or a love with somebody or something older, because Saturn is that. So there's a lot of little nuances of that. All right. Now, these are the symbols for some of the major aspects. So the conjunction is like the circle, the line, and that, again, it's degrees 0 or just a few degrees apart, but we're going to just kind of say 0 because that means that they're right next to each other. And then the opposition is the circle and a line and a circle. That's showing that's opposing, and that's 180 degrees. The square is like a square, which is 90. The trine is like a triangle. That's the 120. The sextile is like the little star shape, or not the star, the asterisk, I guess you would call it. And that's the 60 degrees. And then we have we can put it this way, the semi-sextile and the inconjunct. The semi-sextile is the 30 degrees, and the inconjunct is the 150. And they are very similar in meaning because they're Well, you'll see in a minute. So you can see the inconjunct is that line with the little V, the upside down V on it, and then the semi-sextile is that flipped up the other way around. So I just wanted to point out that these are very similar, but that they're one way and the other, and I'll show you that in a minute. And then there's these two other ones, semi-square. So it's like half of this square, right? The square angle. So it's just showing you that it's half of that square, and it's 45. And then this one is showing you that it's a square plus. So this one is 135 degrees. So we know the square is 90, right? And then it's telling you this little flattened angle is onto this. So we would add that together. So that means 90 plus 45. It's 135. Says quadrate. Don't worry about it. But you can look at that and see that, oh, that's what it means. See, it's a square plus that semi-square. The 90 plus the 45 equals 135. And that's it's a square and a little bit more. So these all have some interesting points to them. All right, let's start to look at this now. Conjunction is you're trying to synthesize or concentrating something. Okay, we're concentrating the energies. They're not all scattered. We're going to start bringing them together. So if a couple things are in conjunction, again, we're forcing them together. Something in oppositions is conflict or challenge. A square is challenge and opportunity. A trine is easy, flow, and comfortable. And the sextile is a can-do. It's a motivation. And I'll show you some more on the other ones too. These are the major aspects. Whoops. Okay, let's see, harmonic aspects, tools, which would be trine and sextile. Dynamic are challenges, and then neutral or conjunction. So the dynamic we're saying is opposition and square. So let's look at these. A trine, it was at 120 degrees. So it's tuning, it's comfort, it's developing, its energy is flowing, it's got an innate ability, and it's got a slow, constant action. The sextile is complementary, energy exchange, creation, immediate productive reaction. Now remember, these are going to be similar in different things. Our trine is got the same element. They're both, if it's trine, they're all going to be water signs or all earth signs, so they all understand. And if it's sextile, then it's going to be all feminine signs, or all masculine signs. Now, when we get into the challenging ones, we have to look at these contrasts. So 180 is contrast, effort, pressure, it should be suppression, stress, passion, passionate attraction, or slack constant action. And the square, tension, laceration, an action reaction, emotive earthquake, irreconcilability. So if you think about the opposition now, let's just take a couple to think at. Let's look at Aries, and we know that's cardinal fire. And if we look at Libra, its opposite, it's going to be cardinal air. So we got at least cardinal in common with that, right? Now, if we have the square, let's again look at Aries. We've got cardinal fire, and then let's look at Capricorn, which would be square. And Capricorn is earth, cardinal earth. So we have that cardinal aspect in this. So we can have something in common. They're both bosses. They're both kings, so we got something in common. Try to look for commonalities. But it's tough because now the elements are not, let's go back one. Let's look at the opposition. So Aries is a male sign, and Libra is a male sign. So we got that in common too. But now when we got the square, we got Aries is male, and then we got Capricorn, which would be female. So it's just a little more tense. See, it's a little more edgy, a little less in common. And then, of course, the conjunction is going to be right on. Union, concentration, binding action, or very intense. But we'll look at this a little bit deeper. So what we're doing is we're comparing, and then this one we're gonna look at Mars right here. Don't bother worried about all this, but just look at Mars, and they're telling us it's 15 degrees. So if we're gonna look at a sextile to Mars, we're gonna count 2 signs, 1, 2, boop, or the other way, 1, 2, right? Because this would be, this is an Aquarius, so we would go masculine, feminine, masculine. And then there we go. And it would have to be close to that degree, that 15 degrees, to be an actual 60 degree. Now we're gonna always give it a few degrees influence. It's not always gonna be 60 right on the button. It might be 57, it might be 62, but that's what we're gonna talk about, the orb of influence. How far away is it before it doesn't have much influence anymore? It's kind of like you hear a siren going by. There's a point when all of a sudden you start hearing that siren and it comes up and it's most intense, and then it starts to go away and decay, and then you don't hear it anymore. So that would be the orb of influence. Okay, and then just to further this, if we have that Mars right here, and if we go, okay, the sextile was 2 signs, and if we're going to go to the square, that would be 3 signs. 1, 2, 3. See? Now, and then we can just check ourselves, and we would say, are we at like fixed and fixed? Because we have Mars is in Aquarius, so we would know that to be square, it's got to be another fixed sign. And sure enough, Taurus is a fixed sign. Okay, and then back over here, we're going 3 signs away, going this way, 1, 2, 3, and then there we are at Scorpio. And then if we're going to do the trine, we got to go more. We got to go 1, 2, so we go 1, 2, 3, 4 signs away. So we go, oh, okay, so we got Mars. We know, okay, is it the right trine? So we know Mars is a fire, and then we're going to go over to, oh, here's Leo. Okay, it's fire, fire. There's our trine. And then the other way, we know that we're going to go, or actually, I'm sorry, we're going to go, Mars is in Aquarius, so we got to go over to the next sign that it's incompatible with over here. And then we're going the other way, the next sign that, whoops, get over there. So we know that this is an air sign, so we're going to go look for an air over here and then an air sign over there. So there's our Libra, I'm sorry. And then over here is our Gemini. There we go. So Mars, at least in this chart, if it's in Aquarius, we've got to go look for the trines to that. So if it's in this air sign, we got to go look for it being in 2 other air signs. And then the very opposite right over here would be our, the opposite of Aquarius, which would be Leo. All right, so that's all. Oh, well, I know what I wanted to tell you. So when we were talking about those angles before, so we said, let's just look at this Mars here. So from Mars, and let me go, let's just go this way. So we've got Aquarius to Pisces, and there's our 30 degrees. Remember I was saying 30, and then here's, why do I keep clicking on that? Keep moving it. Okay, so Mars going over here would be 30 degrees, and then here it would be when it's in Aries, it's in 60, and then 90, and then 120. And then when we get over here to Cancer, that would be our 150 degree angle, which I'll talk about in a minute. And then here we go 180. But now this is where we can do 2 things. We can keep going up in numbers. So we go 180, that would go 210, but it's also like the 150. See, it's on the other side of the opposition. That's one of those first few slides when I was doing that math there. So we can either add that and get, yes, it means that it's, so from here, if we went all the way around to here, that is 180 degrees. And if we did it again, we went here all the way around and to this part over here, that would be our 210. But it's also going from this way, that's only 150. I mean, if we started here, if we started here in Aquarius and we went the other way, it would make it 150 degrees. So hope everybody can see that. And I'm going to do it one more time. If we went Mars and we went all the way around this way and we went past, there's 180 opposite, we add this next 30 would be 210, and then if we're going to add it again, we would have 240. And which should, if we know that, that's going to be a trine, and we sure enough see that that's a trine. And if we add again, then we got 270, 300, 330, 360, back all the way around. Hope that makes sense. I think if not, if you listen to it again, you'll get it. But again, if you're halfway around it, that's that 180. So we can keep adding, and we get all the way to 360, or we can subtract it and get the same angle on the other side of the opposition. Boop, 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 boop. All right, we'll continue. So here's again our 90 degrees. We can do this. This is 90 degrees apart. Anything like that is going to be that angle. There's a trine. I'm just showing you different ways so you kind of get used to this. Sometimes different pictures or different ways, it gets it in your brain. Okay, here's a conjunction, the opposition, see? The trine, the square, and the sextile. Okay, the conjunction. Now, we're going to say that it's blending together, that they're blending together. When two planets are no more than 5 degrees away from each other, they conjunct. Displacement merges, blends, and unites the two planets' energies. They don't stand alone, and they have a hard time acknowledging each other as distinct or separate because they're right there. They can't see each other. This can be a positive, merging together to work as a team, or a negative, too indistinct. It can become a blind spot. But there's more. A conjunction is when two different planets link together in the same sign. Or it could be like the very tail end of one and the very beginning another. If you have something at 29 degrees, let's take Trump. If he had a planet at 29 degrees Leo, and then he's got another planet at, God, I'm losing my train of thought. Let's do it this way. Then, yeah, let's just go this way. Okay, so Leo, then he would have maybe another planet in the next sign of maybe 0 degrees Virgo. So 29 degrees Leo and then 0 degrees Virgo. Even though they're in different signs, they're still conjunct. All right, so just thought I'd put that in there too. They don't always happen that way, but that it would still mean that they're right next to each other. Okay, so just I should have put that in there, but I wanted to tell you. So this hyper-focused aspect, which occurs when 2 or more planets are 0 degrees or very close together, blends that quality of 2 or more planets and makes their combination energy in the sign or the area that they're sharing extra intense. If the qualities of these planets involved work well together, they get along with each other. It can be a great aspect, full of potential for high energy and action. But if the planets don't get along well or bring some heavier, more challenging vibes, then being trapped in a small cosmic space together can cause some discord or amplify the dark feelings. Planets and points that form a conjunction are energies that are united. They are blended, therefore they act together. The closer they are to conjunction, more perfect, the more subjective these combined energies are. They don't stand alone. They have a difficult time truly acknowledging each other as distinct or separate. In effect, conjunctions can be a blind spot. When the sun is in close conjunction to Neptune, for example, others may note the distinction, but it can be hard for the native to distinguish between their sense of individuality and their spiritual, evasive, or roundabout nature. The native may just assume naturally that others are the same way. This was the horoscope on January 12th of this year. This was an intense day, and then we're still feeling a lot of repercussions of it. But let me just look at this. This was a tremendous conjunction in the sky. Look at this. We had Venus Jupiter is a little bit farther away, but it was still in Capricorn. But then look at the sun, 21 Capricorn, Pluto's 22 Capricorn, Saturn 22 Capricorn, and Mercury is 23 Capricorn. That was an intense time. Look at all of that. Those are conjunct. So the person that was born at that time is going to have this stuff in their chart. I mean, we don't know the rising, of course, but they're going to have this grouping, and they're going to be heavy Capricorn. They're not going to know how authoritarian they're going to be. These people are going to be really interesting to watch in about 20 years. Okay, the sextile. This easy aspect is fun, full of good vibes, and undoubtedly positive. Oh, you know what? Before we get off of the conjunction, actually, I want to review something. Hold on, I got a little side note I had. Or maybe I have it over here for you. Hold on. There's so much good stuff. Yeah, okay, I think it's coming up. Yeah, I got something else here. All right, so we'll go on to this. All right, so sextile. It's a friendly, flirty aspect that's 60 degrees apart. Usually they occur between fire and air signs and earth and water signs. With the sextile, the sun is shining, the birds are chirping, situation at hand, happy one. It's a nice break from other stressful transits and can bring us a nice opportunity to chill. The only downside to this aspect is that it's not very action oriented. So don't expect it to bring the energy of a major shift. It's just kind of a calm energy. And these planets that form a sextile are usually easy and compatible as long as it doesn't bring too much drama to a situation, which they usually don't, unless there's something else involved. So sextiles, like trines, point to some talent and ease. However, they have a little more oomph to them, while trines come so naturally to people that they might have to be reminded that their own talents or to be reminded of their own talents or tendencies. Sextiles are a little more overt. So somebody has a trine on something, say maybe the sun is trining, let's see, I'm trying to think, maybe Venus. So maybe it's just, let's do, how about Mercury? So sun trine Mercury. So we're going to have a communication flow that's going to be very compatible. It's going to be really easy for that person to communicate. They may just have a natural gift of gab and just to be able to flow people one another, and they won't even realize it. You know, maybe somebody like Johnny Carson, you know, he was just so natural and people, you know, and he was a great host and blah, blah, blah. He was just so natural at that. Okay, they're communicative and relationship friendly. These point to energies that are capable of being directed. Sextiles reveal the potential for intelligent use of the energies. Let's see, these are talents that people appreciate in themselves. Let's see, a sextile. Here's one coming over here. We've got Mercury at 22 Capricorn, and it's over here. We're going to look at it's 21 Scorpio. So those are two signs apart, right? So we got here, so we have female, and then here we got male, and then female, and the degrees are about the same. So there is a sextile right there. A square. Get ready for a little bit of cosmic drama, because just like the shape itself, a square aspect is chock full of hard angles and sharp corners. So caution is advised. Right there. A square is an intense aspect, which often dictates action. So contrary to their reputation, squares are not necessarily bad. They just show that work will be involved in producing the favored outcome. Considered one of the most decidedly hard aspects at 90 degrees, a square is bound to produce tension between the involved planets or energies. Remember, we said that there was not much, other than their qualities, there's not much in common. They're two kings. And then they don't even have, they're like a male king and a female king. You know, not even a male king and a male king. Okay, but a little tension can be helpful sometimes. This aspect simply illuminates a stressful situation that can be resolved with compromise and effort. By putting in the work and resisting the urge to be stubborn, the square aspect can be an opportunity to find a resolution to an issue, even if it's challenging to do so, challenging or hard to do it. Squares create tension between the planets and points involved. Tension is necessary in order to grow, you know, to stimulate action. But too much tension translates as stress. So the planets involved in a square are acting at cross purposes. With squares, we may overdo and run into countless obstacles before we get it right. However, squares force us out of complacency and get the ball rolling. Squares are often more difficult when we're young, as these aspects force us to grow and learn our lessons. And then we already looked at one before, but I just wanted to show it to you again. And then if you have two, and then they're opposing up here, that is actually a T-square, because it's like a T. But if that one weren't there, it would just these two or these two would be square. A trine is 120 degrees. They're generally the best and most auspicious of them all, bringing luck, harmony, major synchronicity, and a potential for positive change. The simplest way to understand a trine is understanding the elements. A trine occurs when planets in the same element are aspect to each other. When planets are working within the signs of the same element, they naturally get each other's motives, making their energy easier to work with. Trines are positive aspects that produce a positive outcome. The only issue is that they can be a little lazy in achieving their goals. The easy, like Sunday morning, good vibes flow of a trine can sometimes result in our energy being a little bit too at ease. So the biggest mistake we can make with a trine is simply not taking enough initiative because we're too busy basking in the glow of the good vibes. Trines tend to be taken advantage of, not slept on, so don't let these auspicious cosmic moments slip through your fingers. Planets and trines support each other. Trines by nature are accepting. They allow us to accept others, ourselves, and situations. The talents that trines offer a native are so natural that they're almost unconscious. Often enough, natives don't truly appreciate the talents these trines offer them, and they may not try to develop them. Say somebody that sings really good. They sing in a church choir, and they're just awesome. They just like, wow, you got a Barbra Streisand voice. And they're like, huh, really? Yeah. And then they go work at Walmart or something as a cashier. And you're like, what? You should be like on the radio. You should be making albums. Like, what's going on? However, these talents are second nature and completely natural. So maybe there's no squares in there that's going to push them to go do something with that talent. So for example, if a man has Venus trine Neptune, he may be poetic, romantic, or artistic, and he may easily accept his romantic partner for who or she is. Another man with Venus square Neptune may have similar qualities and may possess a strong desire to accept his partner blindly, but doing so is not as natural as the first man. He has to work on it because of the square, and it might come up against difficult situations in which he feels duped or abused by his partner as a result of that acceptance. All right, there's our trine. All right, now apposition. Lastly, let's talk about, these are the major aspects. The opposition, which you guessed it, occurs when planets are fully opposite each other on the zodiac wheel. An opposition occurs when they are in opposing signs, meaning they're found on the opposite sides of the axis. In an opposition, planets can find themselves butting heads. With a whole zodiac wheel between two opposing planets, they're as far apart as a chart can be. And because the two types of energy feel so distant and foreign to one another, this aspect can make it difficult for them to come together. Just like, summer and winter, you cannot wear the same kind of clothes. You cannot. So their wants, needs, and ideas may feel just as polar as their placement. That said, it's not all bad. Opposites attract, remember. So by seeking a balance between the planet's energies and trying to work symbiotically, there's potential for us to make an opposition run smoothly. Day, night, summer, winter. I mean, they have these oppositions have to fill in for each other. I'll cover for you, you cover for me. I got the night shift, you got the day shift. We got it. We got this covered. It can work together like that. Takes two is the expression, and the opposition is created by dividing the circle in two. Therefore, lies the key to the meaning of this aspect. Relationship. People with oppositions tend to seek out others as if to mirror their own inner struggles. They learn about themselves through interactions with others. Very often oppositions cause us to swing from one side to the other and we feel torn, but it also reveals the other side. Somebody that doesn't have any oppositions might have a big problem with relationships because they don't know what it's like to even be forced to look at something opposite. Oppositions represent a state of divided loyalties. Inner discontent, uncertainty, and insecurity can be a result. While a square is urgent and courageous, an opposition is unsure and wavering. When we use our oppositions correctly, we are more willing to consider the other side, and we can be adept negotiators. There's an opposition right there. 24 degrees. Mars 24 degrees Libra and Jupiter 24 degrees Aries. That's about perfect, other than the seconds or minutes. Okay, differences between sextiles and trines. Now, both of those good, nice, flowy aspects, they show us planet buddies who get along. But the trine buddies may take each other for granted, even though they derive pleasure from each other, while the sextile buddies remain separate somehow, and when they cooperate with each other, they fully appreciate their friendship. The expression of the trine is very natural and automatic, while the energies created with the sextile are things that can be drawn upon if need be. With trines, the energy tends to flow naturally into constructive channels, and with the sextile, a conscious effort is required to push the energies into constructive channels. Differences between oppositions and squares. The squares create the kind of tension that demands action. Oppositions also create tension, but natives generally seek out others in relationships in order to work out that tension. Note that planets in opposition generally occur within compatible sign elements. That's what I was saying, that they would be both female or both male, while squares generally occur between signs that are considered incompatible by element. There again, look at that. Okay, predominant aspects in the chart. If there's a lot of conjunctions, those people are focused people. They derive their motivation from within because all the stuff is focused. So with not enough oppositions, it's hard to see the other side, and it's easy for them to lose perspective. If there's a lot of sextiles in the chart, there's communication, creative expression, because they're like all over the place, and they can just jump around between those polarities. If there's a lot of squares, these are crisis-oriented people, action-oriented, motivated, willing to tackle obstacles. They don't blindly accept things. They're very energetic, and they've got a real strength of character and will. People with a lot of trines are unchallenged. They can be talented, accepting, comfortable, complacent. So, I mean, look at the difference. I mean, squares, crisis-oriented, trines, complacent. And then oppositions are contradictory. They're seeking balance in their lives, usually through relationships. And when we see charts that have a lot of stuff on one side and a lot of stuff on the other, those are like, it's called the seesaw. You know, again, we'll look at chart patterns and we'll see that these people would have lots of oppositions and then maybe not a lot of anything else. So they usually would have to deal with their lives through relationship. Insightful, they look for meaning in life, inclined to project qualities onto others. Unfocused, greater capacity for objectivity, and they can seek growth through the relationships. Now, lack of conjunctions in the chart, they're a little bit more scattered because there's nothing grouped together, so things can be scattered about. If there's not a lot of sextiles, they'd be inclined to avoid creative pursuits, are less self-expressive and communicative because they just don't feel that comfortableness within a lot of other signs. If there's a lack of squares, there's a lack of motivation. People tend to take the easy way out, avoid confrontation, unchallenged, and they're unchallenged, and then they're habitual. They do things like habit. If there's not a lot of trines, they're not as balanced people. They're conflict oriented, and they could be very driven. These people might be workaholics without no trines. Without any oppositions, subjectives don't need partners to mirror themselves. Self-contented, not as concerned about growing through relationship or broadening their own perspective, self-reliant. But their relationships tend to be problematic because they're so one-sided, they can't see that opposite side. The closer the aspect, the more unconscious and habitual it will be. This is interesting now. Interesting, I found that we tend to identify more with aspects that we personally do with wider orbs. Aspects with larger orbs are usually dynamic of our personalities that are most obvious to us, while others in our lives may notice the energies of our closer aspects more than we do. Just have to start looking at this. This is because close aspects are very subjective and habitual. They are so much a part of us that we may not pay much attention to it, to the personality dynamics that they represent. With experience and increased self-awareness as feedback from others, we become more in touch with those instinctive facets of our personalities, those knee-jerk things that we don't really realize until somebody points that out. Of course, astrology can help us better understand these. All right, as students of astrology, once we have reached the point where we have proved to ourselves that astrology works, that the following exercise can be extremely rewarding and insightful. So stop to think about each aspect in your chart and accept it as a part of you. Abandon the idea that any one aspect is more powerful than another. Just for the duration of this exercise, allow yourself to accept that each aspect you see in your chart is valid energy in your life. The basis of this exercise is acceptance. In our early studies of astrology, we tend to pick and choose which aspects and positions in our chart are most like us. We think in such terms as, oh, this is me. This aspect is kind of like me, and this is not really me. This is a natural process, and we are still attempting to prove that astrology works or doesn't work. As well, we are not yet open to the fact that although we live with ourselves every moment, we do not know ourselves at all sometimes that well. By picking and choosing which aspects and positions jive with our images of ourselves, we miss out on the insight that is astrology's gift. Each and every aspect in our chart, whether it's tight or wide angle, is ours. And by accepting this concept, we serve again to tremendous insight into our personalities. We increase our awareness and mindfulness. So your homework exercises, if you dare to take this mission, is to look at your chart and try to list the aspects by how they increase. For example, maybe you can do this in a column. Maybe write any conjunctions that you have, and you write what it would be, like Mars conjunct Venus, okay? And then write that down. And then write how many degrees apart they are, 3 degrees or 8 degrees, okay? And then go through, is there anything semi-sextile? That's 30 degrees away. And anything sextile, 60 degrees away. And then 90 degrees away. And then 120, and then 150, and then 180. And then we can also look at the inconjunct. Well, we'll talk about some more of those in a minute. So odd aspect angles. I just want to bring up these last few. So at least you've heard them. Because I want you to see that if this is all, I mean, it's all astrology. It's all math. It all works. But there's some that are bigger than others. So there's the semi-sextile, which is that half the sextile. The sextile was 60, so this is 30. There's the inconjunct, which is 150 degrees. There's the semi-square, which is half the square. And so we said a square is 90, so this would be 45. And then the sesquiquadrate, which is the square and a half, or the square plus, so we have the square plus that 45, which we showed you in that little symbol, which would be the 135. So the semi-sextile is 30 degrees, and there's nothing in common, but they're constantly interacting and building on the energy of each other, and it's persistent. Okay, think about two signs next to each other. They're 30 degrees apart. Okay, so let's take Aries again. Aries, cardinal, fire, male. And the next one to it is Taurus, fixed, earth, female. So nothing in common, but yet they're right next to each other. So they got a little bit in common. They're both kind of in the same season. They're not that far away on the season. So they're kind of, I mean, they sort of build on each other, but they don't really have much in common. The inconjunct is very similar to that 30-degree one, because this is the same thing. It's nothing in common either. And then it's also, but it's on the other side of chart where the semi-sextile is right next to each other. This is on the other side. I'll show you in a minute. So again, there's nothing in common. It's a need for adjustments. It calls for a change in attitude, a change of habit patterns, and a need to adjust to conditions indicated by the planets and house. So adjustment, reorganization, lack of perspective, strain, because there's nothing in common. What do you have, somebody that you don't have anything in common with, you're going to sit down at the bar together and you're not going to talk. It's like, there's nothing in common. Hello, how are you? Fine. What do you do for a living? I'm a accountant. What do you do? I'm a singer. Try again, Where do you live? I live in a small village. Where do you live? In a big city. Oh. Okay. So the inconjunct or quincunx is another name for it. these terms are generally used, they're interchangeable. So these are when they're 150 degrees. So we'll talk about orbs in a minute. So if we say that say a couple degree orb, that could be 148 or 152 degrees apart. Okay, so these planets, they don't really understand each other. And we'll talk about this another time. The signs are not only a different element, they also are a different modality. Like I was just telling you, we just went through this on another one. Okay. So what I found that people with a lot of quincunxes tend to compartmentalize the two areas of life indicated by the planets and points involved. They just kind of like, boop, they're just separate. I'm not going to unite them. We express one of the planets or points involved in an opposition, the other planet or point feels left out. Nevertheless, the opportunities to find a balance are there. But with the quincunx, it can be difficult to merge the energies of the planets involved. You know, so the opposition, it was, you know, like, okay, summer and winter, I get it, you know, but quincunx is like, I don't know, it's like spring and in the not quite fall, you know, it's the other side, not quite there. All right, so they can't merge, they can't mingle, they tend to be in conflict because with each other, not as overt in a way as commonly seen with a square opposition, but the individual separates them consciously or unconsciously. This is why adjustment is associated with both the quincunx planets in life, in the areas of life. And then here's this kind of shows a few of them. So the quincunx, it's like, okay, if we looked at the sun over here, like on the ascendant right here, and then opposite would be there. So it would be one sign back or that way, one sign either like either there or there. And this is showing the sun at, well, it looks like, it's just hard to read. Looks like 2 degrees, or gosh, I can't even read that there, but yeah, I don't know if it's 2 or 5, I can't see that, but this looks like it's Saturn. Here's 3. So yeah, so it's off. So the way you can tell is like go to the opposition and then go one way or the other by 30 degrees. And that is your quincunx, or the 150. The semi-square is where two planets are 45 degrees apart. So this is another strange one because it's going to be a sign and a half, right? So it's gonna be similar to the semi-sextile, but it's gonna be that instead of 30, it's gonna go to the middle of that sign or something. It's gonna be a little bit more apart. So this would be where you divide the circle by 8 is when you get this. So square aspects tend to indicate energy that is blocked between two planets or parts of the individual psyche. But with the semi-square, half the square, this energy appears to be even more deeply blocked, and thus it manifests as external events. A person is forced to address difficulties in their psyche because these continually manifest as events in the outside world that need dealing with. This is when we get fun. We start getting into our different parts of our personalities. So with this fact, the semi-squares can lead a person to great achievements. As the energy of the square is given tangible form in the external world, people with these aspects often develop great persistence, endurance, and productive results of their efforts to control and reconcile these difficult combinations. All right, and then the other one is the 90 degree plus the 45. So that one was the 90 minus the 45. We were left 45 left. Now we're going to add it on this one. So this is topping off the square. It creates tension and challenges us to work and learn. But the conflict is less apparent than with the square. It's easier to suppress, making it more difficult to learn from the challenge. Sesquiquadrates tend to indicate a smoldering conflict that one would prefer to ignore. Any relief would then tend to be short-lived, therefore tend to indicate themes of long-term and stubborn nature. Sessi-squares can occur between planets that are either degrees of the same sign. Okay, we talk about that. Now, the orb, there is an orb of influence where something is in reach and when it's out of reach. Like I was saying, it's like the siren coming in real loud and then it decays. So usually the tighter the orb, the more exact the meaning. So with an outer planet involved, I like to keep it 1 to 2 degrees away. I don't like to go much more than that. Pretty much 1, you know. And then inner planets or the sun and moon can be maybe 5 to 6 degrees away. And then major aspects have a wider orb than the minor ones. So if you have a trine, you can probably allow 5 or 6 degrees. Whereas if you have an inconjunct, I would only allow 1 or 2. All right. And I think that is all. Yes, I want to stop at that today. So let me see if there's any questions on that. So does anybody have any questions on that? I know there's a lot to absorb. There's a lot to think about. But I'm hoping that I can, again, share the fact that all we're doing is dividing the circle. All we're doing is dividing it, and those angles create an ease and flow. And then if we took that circle and all those points and we stretched out like a line, it'd be like a guitar string, and those would all have harmonics all along it. So it's like if I took it, and then if I held it in the middle, that's going to make a certain sound. And then if I held it in the middle of that, it's going to make a certain sound. And then there's going to be those overtones. So it's just another way of looking at mathematics and seeing that there's ease and flow or not. And then we're looking, remember back at the first lesson, I'm going to just hammer this over and over. The ease and flow are things that it has in common, things in common with, or things that it doesn't have in common. And that's all it is. Astrology is complicated and as complex as it is, I really want to boil it down to this simplicity, because if you get this at this stage, when we start getting more deeper into different ways of using astrology, it all boils down to this. And this is all we're going to be looking at in different slices over and over and over again. So
room service.
So thank you. So again, with our charts, let me just show you one other thing, and then we'll go real quick. I just want to show you while we're here. I just have this pulled up. Share screen. Hope I get this. Share screen. Okay, I think I can see this one. All right, this is Donald Trump's chart. So I'm not going to get into it real heavily because we're over time, but I just want to just show you just a chart around here, and I know I'd have to size it. But you're going to just start looking at these things. So first, our mind starts to see all of this stuff. And, we're going to then start look at, oh, this planet's here and that planet's there. And then after you kind of understand that, we're going to start looking at the relationship between each other. It's like we're seeing like, oh, there's some close together. And then, oh, there's one over here. And where is it opposing? And is there what's squaring? And, so that gives us an idea. So we're going to go through this, and one of the next things I really want to do is show you patterns. We're going to look at, like this one is, he's heavy on this upper, this quadrant up here, and there's like empty all over here. Some people have everything all jumbled up, crunched together, and other people's stuff spread all over the place. Some people have stuff like over here and then opposing a bunch of stuff over here. There's all of these different shapes that are formed in patterns. There's the bowl pattern, there's the bucket, there's the seesaw, there's the grand trines and the square, the grand squares, and there's the mystic rectangle, and there's the Star of David. That's when everything is all sextile each other. And as we go, all our planets are having these motions around the sun, and we're doing cycles within cycles. Things line up. They'll all line up and get bunched together, and then sometimes they'll get all spread apart, and then they start coming together, and then, it creates all these patterns. So when we're going through life, your birth date is reminiscent of that era that you were born, and you taking that with you through life and interacting with the new life as it keeps moving. So I hope I shared some light on aspects in math, and it's not that hard. It just keeps boiling down to these same principles over and over. And then as we learn that, these things get entrenched in us, and we'll pretty much learn, oh, anytime you see a fire sign, fire, 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 it's going to be a trine. Anytime you see cardinal energies, cardinal, that those are going to be squares and oppositions. Anytime you see, oh, female, or it's feminine, then it's going to be some kind of a, if it's close to each other, it's going to be a sextile. So you're going to just start seeing these, and then those patterns just start clicking in. All right. So thank you all. And we'll see you next time. Please share the links. It's always going to be the same number. You can invite anybody, and then you can go to the Astro Breeze. I put these on the YouTube pretty much the same night. So thank you for coming, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.